Good evening. My name is David Livingstone. I'm the Chief of Police at Simi Valley Police Department. Tonight, we are having our next in the series of our police community forums. And the police community forums are an opportunity for you as members of our community to get to know the members of our department and the operations of our department and any big issues that are going on in the city a little bit better, and to be informed as much as possible about different aspects of policing here in Simi Valley. Tonight, you're going to hear from Commander Jim Buckley and Sergeant McAllister of our traffic division, and they are going to talk to you about something that is very critical in the city, and that's parking regulations. They're going to have a presentation for you that is going to cover anything from illegal parking citations, how to dispute those citations, the parking of oversized vehicles in neighborhoods, and anything related to enforcement of parking, and also what the laws are in the city in regards to parking your vehicles. Just before we begin and before we introduce Sergeant McAllister and Commander Buckley, just a few housekeeping items. First of all, there is a globe at the bottom of your screen, and this presentation is going to be translated into Spanish. So you can hit the globe and you'll be able to hear the presentation in Spanish. Second of all, there will be a period of time for questions and answers at the end of their presentation. And to ask questions, use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. Don't use the chat function, and then your questions will be answered as they appear when their presentation is concluded. As well, if you have additional questions that come up after this presentation, you can email them to our department and we will get the answers for you. So with that, I thank you for your attendance tonight, and I hope that you learned something from this presentation. You're going to see the PowerPoint, and again, get a good opportunity to ask some questions about these issues. Again, parking regulations being something that can be confusing and can be an issue that creates issues in neighborhoods or problems in neighborhoods, and we want to be able to educate you as much as possible to those. So with that, I will turn this over to Commander Buckley and Sergeant McAllister. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Commander Buckley, and I am in charge of our traffic bureau here at the police department. And accompanied with me is going to be my sergeant, Josh McAllister. We're going to be discussing this evening parking regulations, some of the rules to know, and what we need to follow. Some of the topics we're going to cover this evening are going to be oversized vehicle parking, parking permits and how to get them, the 72-hour parking rule, issues dealing with school zones, disabled parking, parking on unpaved surfaces, vehicle abatement, the parking complaint hotline, and how to dispute a parking citation. Oversized vehicles parking is regulated through our municipal code under 4-9.402A and 4-9.401A of the municipal code. It discusses how any vehicle over 23 feet in length, 7 feet in width, or 8 feet in height is considered an oversized vehicle and is prohibited from parking on a city street for an extended period of time. Deliveries and vehicles such as that are exempt because they aren't going to be parked for a long period of time. Also, commercial vehicles with a manufacturer's gross vehicle weight rating of 10,000 pounds or more in a residential area is prohibited from parking, tow trucks being excluded from that. These are some examples of what would be considered an oversized vehicle here in Simi Valley that would fall under these restrictions and be prohibited from parking. Large motorhomes, commercial trucks, dump trucks, and large vehicles, including trucks with trailers. Those will almost always exceed past 23 feet in length and would fall under those regulations. There are some exceptions to when you can park these type of vehicles throughout the city, and that's by obtaining a parking permit. Parking permits are for oversized vehicles that are going to be parked on city streets for a limited amount of time. They are good for 10 days, consecutive days, and you're limited to 6 permits per calendar year. It is usually not permitted to have 6 consecutive permits, meaning 60 days in a row. You would have to have some type of a exigent circumstance to deal with that. The rule basically states there are 3 consecutive permits that are allowed. The vehicle must be parked in front of your residence or adjacent to your residence and must be registered to your residence. These permits can be revoked by the police department at any time due to violations or failure to follow the rules. There are 3 ways you can obtain that parking permit. The first one is you can come to the police department during normal business hours, 8 to 5, and go to the front desk. You can simply request a parking permit, explain your circumstances, and they can issue a permit right there. The second way is to log on to our city's website. As you can see on the PowerPoint, the website's listed. You scroll down to a blue circle labeled permits, then click on oversized vehicle permits, and it'll walk you through the process. The last way is to call our parking complaint and permit hotline, which is listed on the PowerPoint. It's best to get the permit at least 2 days in advance so that if there are any complications or concerns with obtaining that permit, you'll have time to correct them.
We have some exceptions to our oversized vehicle exceptions. Their restrictions generally do not apply to resident vehicles involved in general recreation related activities. So basically, if you have a oversized vehicle, a trailer, an RV, some kind of motorhome that you're going to use take for a trip, you're allowed to park that vehicle in front of your residence for up to 48 hours for loading, unloading, and preparing for your trip. That's before you go and then after you come back. You can also have it there for up to 48 hours for any kind of maintenance concerns which need to be done to the vehicle. Residents in the city can also obtain a permit for a guest that's visiting them at their house. So if they have a guest coming that has a motorhome, as long as it's a guest of a resident, then you are allowed to obtain a permit for that guest also.
RV parking on private property is somewhat of a complex situation right now here in the city of Simi Valley. There's a detailed information pamphlet, if you will, online at the simivalley.org at off-street parking location, which you can see 836753 to get clear explanation on where you can and cannot park an RV on your private residence. We've been talking mostly about oversized vehicles. There are rules that specifically deal with how long you can park any vehicle, whether it's oversized or not, on the city street. The general rule is 72 hours. You're required to move your vehicles at least a noticeable difference or noticeable distance every 72 hours. This is to prevent vehicle owners from storing vehicles on the street for extended periods of time and creating an unsightly environment for all of our community members. School zones. We're going to discuss some of the rules and regulations that affect our school zones and some things that you can do as community members to assist us in dealing with those issues. Throughout all of our schools, there are areas that are going to be marked no stopping. You'll have yellow curbs, you'll have red curbs. Those each mean a different thing. If you pull up to the front of a school and there's a yellow curb, it is for loading and unloading only. That is not for you to park in and leave your vehicle. If you're there to retrieve your student, then you are allowed to stay in that vehicle and wait for loading and unloading only. Do not leave your vehicle standing there unoccupied and unable to move. There are also turning restrictions during specific times at most schools. This is to prevent further traffic backup, and usually it's going to prevent left turns out of driveways. They want to keep the flow of traffic moving, and right turns out of driveways are going to be more conducive to that. Whenever you're at a school, make sure you're looking for traffic control signs. They are usually time specific, they're usually clearly posted, and it's in your best interest to follow those signs so that you don't get a citation for some reason, also for the safety of our children. Please make sure you slow down. The school zones are posted for 25 miles per hour, and we want to make sure that all of our kids make it home safe. So please pay attention, especially when you're around those school zones, and slow down. Whenever possible, keep traffic moving. We know that there's a lot of problem areas that deal with our schools, and it creates a lot of congestion. If it forces you to maybe do a lap around the block to keep traffic moving, we would greatly appreciate that. make sure you were patient and remember that we're here for, everybody's there for their own kids. Everybody wants to get in and out as quickly as possible. But the safer we do that, the faster and more efficient we're going to get through our school zones.
Next, we're going to talk about our disabled parking and the rules and regulations regarding to that. This applies to private property where most of our disabled parking spaces are going to be in our city. City Municipal Code Section 4-9.506A1 prohibits parking in a marked disabled parking spot without a disabled placard. So basically, you can either have a disabled placard on the windshield, or you can have a disabled parking plate, which is issued by DMV. Both of them are issued by DMV. If you don't have one of those and you're parked in a disabled parking space, then an officer could come out and issue a citation. Now, if you do have the placard that you would hang in your up on your mirror and you just forget to put it up when you park in the parking space, you still may get a citation. And then there's also a section which covers just failing to put up the proper displayed placard on your window. We also see the parking spaces with the crosshatch lines in between the disabled parking spaces. It's also illegal to park on the blue crosshatch lines that are in between the parking spaces. These blue crosshatch lines are designed for mobility type vehicles which require ramps or other wheelchairs to exit out of the side of the vehicle. If vehicles park on those lines or block in between and park in between those lines, it could prevent someone from being able to access their vehicle. Next slide. Next, we deal with the electric vehicle disabled parking spaces. We have started to see now at the entrance of electric vehicles throughout California and everywhere else, there are some multi-use spaces which basically include an electric vehicle parking along with the disabled parking spaces. These spaces are unique. While they are marked with a handicap placard and for handicap parking, if it's not being occupied by a handicap vehicle and you have an electric vehicle, you may park your electric vehicle there to charge your vehicle. Now, those are only for active charging. They're not to stay there on the charger for hours at a time. Once your vehicle is done charging, you need to move your vehicle and get it out of the parking space. If there's not a vehicle in it and a disabled person wants to park in that space, whether or not they have an electric vehicle, they are allowed to park in that parking space. They do not have to be charging their vehicle while they're parking there.
Some of the problems that we do see throughout the city are people parking their vehicles on unpaved surfaces. Usually this is going to be on a private residence. It can be on a commercial lot, but often we see the problem being on private residence. In short, it's not allowed. You're not allowed to park any type of a vehicle on unpaved surfaces for any period of time. 4-9.202 parenthetical A of the municipal code prohibits parking any vehicle, vessel, or trailer on an unpaved surface within your property. This law is in place to prevent environmental damage, like oil and gas, things like that, from seeping into the ground, as well as to preserve a presentable appearance throughout our community. We don't want to have a vehicle storage yard in somebody's front lawn. It's just not appropriate. So anytime we can prevent that, we're going to take that opportunity. Vehicle abatements. This is a process in which the city, and it's a joint effort between us, code enforcement, and the city attorney's office to actually remove vehicles from public and private property if they are things such as an eyesore, like an unsafe vehicle that's in a status of disarray or in repair. It is some type of just what appears to be an abandoned vehicle or an unkempt or cared for vehicle. This process is time consuming. So if you have a problem like this within your community, please be understanding of that it does take us time to deal with these. We have to obtain search warrants. We have to get different type of warnings and notices out to all registered owners of the vehicle. So please be patient and understanding. But if you see something like this, please make sure you call the hotline, which has already been presented, and you'll see it at the end as well. So that way you can report these type of issues so we can know about them and try and deal with them. How do you go about making a parking plate? If it's an urgent matter, such as a blocked driveway, a blocked fire lane, a fire hydrant, or some type of a disabled parking violation, you want to call the police department's business line at 805-583-6950. These are not a 911 call. Don't dial 911 to report a parking issue. For less urgent issues, go to the city's website, click on the departments, go to the police department, and on the left side, you will see a tab labeled parking complaint. Utilize that, and you can report the complaint online. You can also call, as I referenced before, our complaint hotline at 805-583-6921. Excuse me. Those type of complaints, the ones that are reported online and telephonically, they're checked daily as best as they can, but please understand that we do get a high volume of complaints regarding parking. We may not address your specific issue that specific day, but you will be put on the list to deal with these issues as quickly as possible. If you happen to receive a parking citation and you feel that you were wronged or received it in error, there are simple ways to try and dispute the citation. First of all, if you believe you received the citation in error, you must file an administrative review with the City of Simi Valley's customer service. It must be filled out 21 days from the date of the citation or 15 days from the date of the mailed notification. All recipients of a parking citation will also receive a notification in the mail from the City of Simi Valley. The form can be delivered in person or mailed, and they do take into consideration postmarks. Be sure to include any proof or evidence that you have that the citation was issued in error. How do you get that administrative review form? You can go again onto our website, and it can be found under the permit lines. On the upper right corner, there's a search icon, search for administrative review, or you can appear in person at City Hall at 2929 Tapo Canyon Road. You can obtain the actual paper form that way. Complete the form, include any evidence or photos that mitigating factors for your situation, submit the form on time. This form will be reviewed by either myself or Sergeant McAllister, and then you will be notified of the decision whether you're being held liable or not liable. In closing, we want to touch base on, make sure that we're looking for signs that prohibit parking. Read the signs. Some of them are lengthy, some of them have time frames. Make sure that you read them completely. Be courteous when you're parking. Make sure you leave room for other people to park or to actually move out of their parking space. If you see a safety concern, report it and just try and follow the rules. That concludes our actual presentation, but we are now open to any type of questions or concerns that you'd like to raise.
So at this point, we have one question that's popped up. The question is, can residents park a vehicle behind a home on a decomposed granite surface, or does it have to be cement? This would be a question more for code enforcement. I know currently the city's in the process of dealing with all the RV parking and different parking and what surfaces has to be on the side and the back of the yard. So this is definitely something more code enforcement would have an answer to.
On that website that was listed earlier on, and I believe you should be able to pull it up, but it's going to be at www.simivalley.org/off-street parking. That will actually give you a map of what the current regulations are of where you can and cannot park your RV and what type of surface it can be on. But do understand, as Sergeant McAllister explained, this is a topic that is in the forefront at our city council and with our code enforcement, and it is currently being discussed on if there should be any changes.
So second question popped up. Since electric parking spots, has there been a dispute between drivers when electric cars is in disabled parking space? I'm not aware of any current disputes between drivers. I do know that we have had calls for service of electric vehicles parked in those spots, and the officers do go out and educate and notify the people that called us that it is okay for an electric vehicle to park there as long as it's charging, even without a handicap plate or placard.
At this point, there does not seem to be any further questions. We're going to conclude this presentation. If you have any further questions, you can contact the Simi Valley Police Department. Oh, we had another question. I apologize.
One other question popped up, and it's, what is SVPD's take on expired tags and citizens reporting them? currently the way California law is, there's really, if a vehicle's parked on a side on the roadway and it has expired tags, if we can't, only if it's expired over 6 months can we do something about it. So if someone sees a vehicle in their neighborhood that's expired and wants us to come out and look at the vehicle, we'll definitely come out there and have a parking officer or someone make sure the vehicle is in compliance with the city's codes about moving every 72 hours and not being left in one spot for an extended period of time. If it comes to just expired tags, then we can come out, and if it's over 6 months, we'll definitely handle it and deal with it.
A vehicle can also be cited for just simply having expired registration. It won't be towed, as Sergeant McAllister stated, until 6 months of expiration, but any type of an expired tag is subject to either a warning or a citation.
So there's a question about what do you do with an eyesore truck? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by eyesore truck. As long as the vehicle, even though it may not be pleasing to look at, as long as the vehicle is in compliance with the city's regulations and all the vehicle codes, and it's moving when it's supposed to and not staying in one spot more than it's allowed to, then there's not a lot that we can do with it.
But if it falls within those realms that we've discussed, as far as it appearing to be an abandoned vehicle or an unsafe vehicle or creating some type of a public nuisance, then it can be dealt with through the abatement program or simple citations to encourage the registered owner to move the vehicle.
Another question popped up: when driving ahead of us, I saw where you all caught someone who had stolen items in the car when pulled over by SVPD. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I wouldn't be able to answer any questions on if that happened or when it happened.
We've had a couple of those situations where they've actually pulled vehicles over that have had stolen catalytic converters. And that is a problem that is facing actually nationwide. Unrelated to parking, if you hear something in the middle of the night that sounds like some type of metal being cut, or you believe that there is somebody out there stealing a catalytic converter, please contact the police department at 805-583-6950 or 805-583-2911, I believe is the other number. We want to know about that as soon as possible. Don't hesitate, don't delay, because the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can go out and try and deal with it. If nobody's there, that's okay. We'd rather check and have that happen versus somebody be victimized, because a stolen catalytic converter is an extremely impactful situation for victims. All right, that concludes our presentation. We want to say thank you very much for going through it with us. If you have any further questions, you can contact the Simi Valley Police Department at 805-583-6950. And you can ask for myself, Commander James Buckley, or Sergeant McAllister. Thank you very much.